Hi everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Diep tries to tell herself it's just a mind game. That's what people always say when fear hits too hard. It's probably nothing. Don't overthink it. Don't let them get in your head. But this time, the threat doesn't come for her business. It doesn't come for her reputation. It doesn't even come for the contract. It comes for the baby. One line. One ugly, targeted message that lands like a knife, sharp enough to make her hands go numb. Diep feels her whole body go cold, like someone poured ice down her spine. For a few seconds, she can't breathe properly. She just sits there, staring at the screen, hearing her own heartbeat in her ears. She presses a palm to her stomach without thinking, like she can physically shield what's inside her. "No," she whispers. "No, no, no." Then she forces herself to swallow it down, forces her brain to work. Because fear is loud, but deadlines don't care, and the deadline is now. Today is the day the retail chain asks for the final submission, the last comparison file, the final set of documents that proves her traceability and compliance is real. The last step before they decide whether Diep is worth trusting or worth cutting off. Diep tells herself, focus, don't spiral, get the file in, get through today. She opens the folder again, checks the checklist she made, page by page, tab by tab, and then she sees it. A missing page, not a random sheet, not something minor, the exact page that went missing before. Diep's throat tightens. She flips through again, faster this time, like the paper might magically appear if she moves quickly enough. She checks the binder. She checks the envelope. She checks the scans on her laptop. Nothing. Her fingers start shaking because now it doesn't feel like an accident. It feels like a hand reaching in, pulling the one piece that can ruin everything, and then leaving her to drown in the chaos. She stands up so fast her chair scrapes the floor. No, 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 no. The house becomes a storm. Deep tears through drawers. She empties bags. She checks under stacks of paper, under books, under the kids' notebooks, under grocery receipts. She moves like someone being chased, because that's exactly how it feels. Like time is chasing her, and something else is chasing her too. She runs to the shelf where she keeps old files and starts yanking them down one by one. Dust explodes into the air. Her eyes sting. She coughs and keeps going. She grabs her phone and calls James. It rings. Rings again. Finally, he picks up, and his voice is already tense. "Diep? The page is gone again," she blurts out. "The same one. It's missing." A pause. A sharp inhale on the other end. James doesn't ask if she's sure, because he knows Diep doesn't say things like this unless she's already checked 10 times. "I'm stuck at work," he says, voice tight, like he's trying to keep his own panic under control. "I'm trying to get out. I'm talking to my boss right now." "James, I need you here," Diep says, and she hates how small her voice sounds. "They want the final file today." "I know," he says. "I know. I'm trying. Trying. Everyone is always trying, and somehow it's never enough to stop the clock." Diep hangs up and turns to another idea. The camera. If they have anything, any footage, any angle, maybe she can see who touched the files, who moved what, when the page disappeared. Even if it's not perfect, even if it's just a clue, anything that turns her fear into something solid. She checks whatever camera system they have access to. She rewinds, skips forward, watches herself moving around, watches Nye walking by, watches James coming in and out. It's all normal, boring footage that makes her feel crazier because nothing looks suspicious. Yet the page is still gone. Her mind starts stacking worst case scenarios like bricks. What if the chain thinks I'm lying? What if they cancel the trial? What if the penalty clauses kick in? What if this is exactly what someone wants? Push me until I collapse. And under all of those thoughts, one fear throbs louder than the rest. They threatened the baby. Diep tries to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. She has read enough about stress to know it's bad for pregnancy. She tells herself to calm down, to sit down, to stop shaking, but her body doesn't listen. A dull ache starts low in her abdomen, small at first, like a warning tap. Diep freezes for a second, presses her hand there again, and tells herself, it's just stress. It's just tension. Then the ache grows sharper, not constant, pulsing, like a cramp that doesn't know whether it's coming or going. Diep swallows hard and forces her legs to move again. She keeps searching, because what choice does she have? The contract is on the edge. The family is on the edge. And now her body is on the edge too, like all three are tied together. And if one falls, everything falls. Minutes feel like hours. She calls James again. No answer this time. She messages him, please come now, I'm scared. Then she throws herself back into the files, checking places that don't even make sense. Kitchen cabinet, Nye's backpack, the laundry basket, the trunk of the car. Anywhere a paper could hide. The ache in her abdomen deepens. Diep winces, pauses, then keeps going. She tells herself, just find the page. Just submit the file. Then you can rest. Then you can breathe. Then you can take care of the baby. That's the lie she clings to. And then, like a cruel joke, she finds it. The missing page is sitting inside an old file pouch, one she hasn't touched in weeks, tucked into a stack of older documents at home. It's there, clean, not torn, not damaged, just placed. Diep stares at it, and for a second she can't move. Her brain can't decide whether to feel relief or rage, because the placement answers the question she didn't want to ask. This was never about losing the page. Whoever did this didn't want it destroyed. They wanted it missing long enough to make her panic, long enough to scramble her timeline, long enough to make her look unreliable, long enough to push her body into stress and fear. It wasn't theft. It was torture. Diep's hands tightens around the paper until it crinkles. Her breath turns sharp. She feels heat rise into her face, a sudden wave of fury so intense it makes her dizzy. Someone is playing with me, she whispers, voice shaking. Someone is playing with my family. The ache in her abdomen spikes. Diep bends slightly, then straightens like she can force her body into obedience. Not now, not today, not when she's this close. She grabs the page, shoves it into the correct folder, and bolts for the door. She's moving too fast, too reckless, like the world is narrowing into a tunnel with only one exit. Get to the partner, submit the file, protect the contract, protect the family. Her thoughts aren't even full sentences anymore. They're flashes. Run. Submit. Don't be late. Don't let them win. Hold on. Outside, the air feels too bright, too loud, too normal for what's happening inside her. Diep gets into the car, hands shaking on the wheel. She checks the folder again, 3 times, like she doesn't trust reality anymore. She pulls out of the driveway like she's escaping something. Halfway down the road, the cramping hits again, harder. Diep inhales sharply. Her vision swims at the edges. She grips the steering wheel tighter, trying to focus on the lane lines. Just a little more, she mutters. Just get there. The pain tightens like a fist. A wave of nausea rolls up her throat. She feels sweat break out across her back. Diep slows down, blinking hard. The world blurs for a second, then snaps back. She tries to breathe through it, but her body feels like it's turning against her. Then another wave hits, strong enough that she gasps out loud. Diep's foot slips off the gas as she fights to stay upright. She pulls over, barely, hands clumsy and numb. The moment the car stops, she doubles over, clutching her stomach. Her breath comes out in broken pieces, and then she feels it. Warmth, wetness, wrongness. Diep looks down and sees red, not a little, enough to make her blood turn into ice. Her heart drops so hard it feels like falling. No, she whispers, voice breaking. No, please, please no. Her hands tremble as she reaches for her phone. She tries to call James again. It rings once, twice, and then James answers, breathless, like he's already running. Diep? I'm on my way. Where are you? Diep can barely speak. Her voice is thin and panicked. I'm bleeding. James, I'm bleeding. There's a sound on the other end, like his world just shattered. Stay there, he says instantly. Don't move. I'm coming right now. I'm calling. Diep tries to breathe, tries to keep herself conscious, tries not to look at the blood because it makes the panic worse. She presses a shaking hand to her stomach like she can hold everything in place. Her vision flickers. The pain comes in waves, pulling her under. And then she sees James's car, suddenly, impossibly, skidding to a stop nearby. James runs to her door. He yanks it open, and the second he sees her face, pale, drenched in sweat, eyes wide with terror, his expression collapses. He looks down, sees the blood. Diep, oh my God. Diep tries to speak, but her body folds in on itself from another cramp. A sound escapes her that doesn't even feel human. Half sob, half gasp. James fumbles for his phone, voice shaking but loud, urgent, commanding as he calls for help. Please, Diep whispers, barely audible. Please. The baby? James grabs her hand so tightly it hurts, like pain is the only thing that can keep her tethered. Stay with me, he says. Stay with me. Help is coming. Please, just stay with me. And as the sirens begin to grow louder in the distance, Diep stares at the folder on the seat beside her. The saved missing page, the contract documents, the proof she fought like hell to protect. And she realizes, in the most terrifying way, that none of it matters if she can't protect what's inside her. The ambulance arrives like a blur, lights flashing, voices overlapping, hands moving fast. James is trying to explain everything at once, stumbling over his words, pointing at the blood, at Diep's shaking body, at her stomach like the paramedics can see the panic just by looking. She's pregnant, he says, voice breaking. She's bleeding. She just collapsed. Please. One of the paramedics presses a firm hand to James's shoulder. Sir, we've got her. Stay close, but let us work. Diep is half aware, floating in and out of focus. The world feels far away, like she's underwater. She hears her own breathing, ragged, panicked, and then someone's voice telling her to keep her eyes open. Ma'am, can you tell me your name? Diep, she whispers. Okay, Diep, stay with us. We're going to take you to the hospital right now. They lift her onto the stretcher. The movement sends another wave of pain through her, and she gasps, clutching her stomach. James follows, frantic, trying to climb in with her. I'm here. Diep, I'm here. Diep reaches for him with weak fingers, and James grabs her hand like he'll never let go again. The ambulance doors slam shut, and suddenly the outside world disappears. In the harsh, white lighting, Diep sees the folder again, still in the car, still filled with paperwork that was supposed to save everything. It flashes through her mind like a cruel joke. Contracts, evidence, deadlines, penalties. None of it can stop what's happening inside her body. The ride is fast, but time stretches. Diep counts her breaths like it's the only thing she can control. The pain comes and goes in waves, each one stealing more of her strength. James is kneeling beside the stretcher, eyes locked on her face, whispering the same words over and over. Hold on, please, hold on. We're almost there. Diep tries to speak, but her mouth is dry. She wants to say, I'm sorry. She wants to say, I tried. She wants to say, don't let them take our baby. But all she can manage is a broken sound. When they arrive at the hospital, everything becomes motion. Hallways, doors, nurses, questions. A name bracelet slapped onto her wrist. They wheel her into a room. James tries to follow, but a nurse stops him. Sir, you need to wait outside for a moment. James's face twists. No, I need to be with her. I understand, but we need space to assess her. Please, right there. The nurse points to a chair in the hallway. James looks at Diep, terrified, like if he lets go, something will happen. Something already is happening. Diep's eyes find his. She tries to squeeze his hand once before they separate her from him. It's weak, but it's everything she has. Then the curtain pulls shut. Inside, the room is cold. Not temperature, feeling. Diep is surrounded by professionals who are kind but efficient, and that efficiency makes everything scarier because it means they've seen this before. It means they know where this might go. A doctor comes in, calm voice, careful eyes. Diep, we're going to do an exam and an ultrasound, okay? We need to understand what's causing the bleeding. Diep nods, even though her throat feels locked. They do what they need to do. Diep tries not to look at the instruments. She tries not to listen too hard, because every sound feels like a countdown. Minutes pass, or hours. She can't tell. Then the doctor's expression changes. Not dramatic, just softer. He sits down, and that alone makes Diep's heart collapse. Diep, he says gently, I'm very sorry. The words land before the meaning does. Diep stares at him, blinking like a child. Sorry. For what? The doctor takes a breath. You've had a miscarriage. Or, if you want the version that hurts in a different way, the doctor might say, you're having a threatened miscarriage, but the bleeding is significant. And then later, after more waiting, after more hope, after more denial, the outcome is still the same. Either way, the ending is identical. They can't save it. Diep's mind refuses to accept it at first. It's like her brain won't let the sentence connect. Miscarriage. That's a word that belongs to other people, to sad stories online, to warnings. Not to her. Not now. She presses her hands to her stomach again, eyes wide with disbelief. No, she whispers. No, I was careful. Her voice cracks. She can't even finish the sentence because what does careful mean when your body decides something anyway? The doctor says something about stress, about biology, about how this happens more often than people think, about how it's not her fault. But Diep hears it like static. None of it lands. All she can feel is the emptiness rushing in. The baby was there. And now, it isn't. When they finally let James in, he enters the room like a man walking into a nightmare. His eyes search Diep's face first, checking if she's alive, if she's okay, if she's still here. Then he looks at the doctor, and he knows before anyone says it because he sees it in their eyes. James's knees almost buckle. He grabs the back of the chair to steady himself. What happened? He asks, voice small. The doctor explains, calmly, carefully, like this is a delicate object they're trying not to break. But James is already broken. He sits down hard, head in his hands. He doesn't cry loudly. He just folds in on himself like his chest has been punched from the inside. Diep watches him, and in that moment, something in her snaps. Not rage, not fear, just a hollow silence. Because she doesn't know how to comfort him when she can't even breathe. The next hours move in slow motion. Nurses come and go. Paperwork appears, instructions, medication, follow-ups. Diep is physically exhausted, but her mind is trapped in one loop. I chose the baby. She thinks about the last days, working, running, chasing paperwork, telling herself she could save both, save the deal and save the family. She thinks about the moment she found the missing page, the rage, the sprint, the way her body started warning her and she refused to listen. And now, this. When the room quiets, Diep finally speaks. She turns her head toward James. Her voice is flat, like all emotion has drained out. I chose our baby, she says. James looks up, eyes red, face destroyed. Diep swallows, and it takes her everything to say the next part. And the baby still didn't stay. That sentence hangs in the air like smoke after an explosion. James reaches for her immediately, like instinct, like he can fix this with his arms. He leans in and holds her, tight, too tight, like he's trying to squeeze time backward. I'm sorry, he whispers. I'm so sorry. I should have... He stops, because he doesn't know what to say. There is no sentence that can fix it. There is no apology big enough. Because what are you apologizing for? Work, stress, bad timing, life? Diep doesn't cry right away. She just stares at the wall, eyes empty, while James holds her and shakes. For a moment, it feels like the world stops. Then the outside world comes back, as cruel and casual as ever. Diep's phone buzzes. James glances at it, then looks away, like he can't stand the idea of business entering this room. But Diep sees the sender name and knows what it is. The retail chain. She opens it with numb fingers. The message is short, professionally polite, and brutal in its indifference. Due to documentation risk and unresolved file issues, they are temporarily suspending the official signing. Not canceling, not continuing. Suspending. A corporate way of saying, you're unstable, you're risky. We don't want this right now. Diep reads it, and she feels nothing at first. Then a cold laugh almost escapes her. Because of course this is how it happens. She fought to save the contract and lost her baby, and now she's losing the contract anyway. It's like life looked at her and decided to take both. James sees her face change and asks softly, "What is it?" Diep doesn't answer. She just turns the screen toward him. James reads it, and his jaw tightens. He doesn't explode. He doesn't curse. He just closes his eyes like he's trying to hold back something violent inside his chest. "Not now," he whispers, like he's talking to the universe. Not now. But not now doesn't matter to emails. Later, after they've signed forms, after nurses explain what to watch for, after Diep is cleared to go home, James helps her walk out of the hospital. She moves slowly, every step heavy. Her body feels weak. Her heart feels absent. Outside, The air is warm and normal, like the world didn't notice anything happened. James opens the car door for her. Diep sits, staring ahead, hands folded in her lap. And then, as if the universe wants to twist the knife, Vi's voice appears. Through a message, a call, or a perfectly timed encounter depending on how you want the scene to land. It's short, cold, almost bored. Life is like that, Vi says. When you climb high, you have to pay the price. Diep stares at the screen, and for a second, her emptiness turns into something else. Not chaos, not panic. A quiet, terrifying stillness, because now the stakes have changed. Before, Diep was fighting for a contract. Now she's carrying a grief so deep it burns. James reaches over and holds her hand, whispering, "We'll get through this." But Diep doesn't respond right away. She looks out the window, eyes dry, voice barely above a whisper. "Not everyone wins," she says, "not even when they do everything right." The episode ends on that feeling. No victory, no closure, just the truth that sometimes the hardest pain is the kind where nobody wins. A baby gone, a deal frozen, a family shattered and trying to hold itself together, and a shadow in the background, still watching, still smiling, because the damage is already done. Diep receives a terrifying threat aimed at her unborn baby and tries to believe it's only psychological pressure. But on the day she must submit the final document comparison, the exact same critical page is missing again. She tears through the house, checks cameras, and calls James, who is trapped at work but scrambling to come help. As the deadline closes in, Diep is pulled between saving the contract and protecting her family, while her body begins warning her with growing abdominal pain. She finally finds the missing page hidden inside an old folder, realizing someone never intended it to be lost, only to drive her into panic. Rushing to deliver the file, Diep collapses on the road, bleeding and in severe pain. James arrives just in time as she is rushed to the hospital, where they lose the pregnancy. The chain suspends signing due to documentation risk, and Vi coldly says, "Success always demands a price."